every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, you know, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times. And only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner-managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner-managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. On this week's episode of ScaleUp Radio, we focus on leadership. Now, leadership is a concept that means different things to each of us as business owners, depending perhaps on where we are on our scale-up journey, but also our own leadership style. So if you're a solopreneur, or whether you have a handful of people, or even have multiple layers of management in a larger business, the kind of leadership required may well be different, but it is equally important wherever you are on your scale-up journey. So to give you a quick flavour of some of the things that we cover, we look at several aspects of leadership, including things like establishing just what it means to be a leader within a business. Is it just about being the boss, the owner, the CEO, or is there something more to it than that? We talk about how to make sure that you're able to function as a leader and don't keep getting dragged back into the day-to-day operations of running the business itself. And we also think about when and how you need to change from being a leader-follower type model to being a leader of leaders when it's no longer possible to be the only one driving the business forwards. And we also have a great presentation from Dr. Lizzie Bernthal, who gives her experiences and her take on leadership within a business, talking about trust and her C's of leadership. And Lizzie has a background in the military, several years of leading teams of people in highly stressful environments, and she's a great person to listen to and learn from about leadership. And leadership is such a fundamental part of scaling a business that you're not going to want to miss this one. So this time it's around leadership. And it spans the whole journey, really, on our scale-up journey. And typically, there's a change in the kind of leadership that we need to think about within our businesses as we get more people. Often it's around that 8 to 12 employee level. Up to that point, really, it's primarily about developing our own skills as a leader and being the best version of ourselves that we can be. But we're starting to lead other people. So it's a bit of a leader-follower type model. As we get beyond that and we've got more people, we can't possibly be the one that's telling everybody what to do and just leading from the front. So we need to start to develop leaders within the business and move more towards a leader type model. Of course, it's not it's not simply where that dotted line is. It clearly is a bit of a spectrum. But we need to start transitioning from that point. And also from a delegation point of view, initially, if we want to build a successful business early on, we've got to be able to delegate the things that we shouldn't be doing or that we're not the best at. So we don't want to be keeping hold of bookkeeping and general admin things if we don't need to. to free us up to make sure that we can focus on the more important things. As we go beyond that point, the delegation thing needs to start to change to delegating even the things that we are the best at, because otherwise we just simply become the bottleneck within the business. And what I thought I'd do, we did some research about 18 months ago now, and we're going to be repeating it into the challenges of building and scaling a business. And I'm just going to pick out a few key points from that, because it leads into the leadership side of things. So early on, when we've got that one-person business and we're starting to transition to 3 to 5, really, one of the big challenges is getting dragged back into day-to-day operations, but also generating sufficient quality leads. Then it starts to move to attracting and hiring people, getting staff to think and act and take responsibility, but also ensuring consistency of delivery. So when we're thinking leadership, we need to be thinking some of these things. As we go a bit further, continues with getting staff to think and act and take responsibility in the way that we would want them to. And that continues really throughout, but not having the right staff in place to support growth. And we all know how difficult it is, particularly at the moment, to find good staff. But then the staff management, making sure they do the right things consistently well, becomes increasingly important, as does potentially accessing funding as we need to scale. And then those sort of things continue a little bit as we get a bit further on. But if we look particularly at our leadership focus, now clearly, we need to basically do a lot of things across the whole journey from a leadership point of view. But if we were to pick out one or two key things, then essentially early on, it's rolling your sleeves up. You just have to get on with it, don't you? When we're the only person that's really around in the business, but equally being a highly effective, capable individual, and we can do worse than take a leaf out of Stephen Covey's book. Then, as we go, we need to start focusing on where we add the most value and delegating the rest. So we need to specialize a little bit within the business and define those roles for us as the leader and delegate the things that we shouldn't be doing. Then we've got to start focusing on systems and processes, but essentially making it a turnkey business that's not too reliant on us. So it becomes about processes and habits, we like to refer to them as, and then developing other leaders, as I was mentioned before, and our role changes to supporting them to fulfill their roles effectively. And then as we get bigger, we become more of an ambassador for the business and promoting maybe the overall business rather than individual products and services within the business. So what is leadership? I thought it's worth a moment or two just to have a quick look at that. And essentially, what is the essence of leading? And this is a Jim Collins quote, which we particularly like. And he defines it as the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. And if you think about that, first of all, it's an art. So there's not one right way to be a leader. We've all got our own ways of doing it. So it is an art, but we've got to get people to want to do. So that's sort of the alignment bit. We've got to get them to want to do what must be done. And that must be done means we've got to define what are the important things that must be done. And those of you that were on the business rhythm session last time around know that a lot of that 90-day planning is around getting to what must be done. So that's bridging then the strategy piece within there. So the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. And if we want to become a good leader, or if we want to develop others as well, then we need to know ourselves first before we can lead ourselves. And this is a nice little infinity loop to show how that works, because we all have traits based on our leadership, based on individual traits, our personality styles. That leads to the way that we act, which in turn will have consequences, which in turn then will lead to the results. So if I'm overly keen on telling people, jumping to conclusions, if that's my trait, to quickly jump to a conclusion, my action is that I jump in and I tell people the consequences. I may not have actually really understood the problem properly, and therefore the results are not going to be as good as they could be. Or if I'm a salesman, the same thing, if I don't listen well enough. So what I might want to do then is think about, okay, well, maybe if I acknowledge that, if I understand that, then I can start to take a breath before I jump in. So maybe I can seek to understand a little bit more first, take a little bit of a pause. That should mean that I've listened better, that I've understood more what the challenges are, and that should enable me then to achieve better results. So that comes links nicely in with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. And if we're looking about being a more effective leader, I encourage you to seek these out really, and have a think about them, because you could do worse than picking one of these every 90 days or so and thinking, how could I improve that? So being proactive, obviously, first of all, as business owners, I would imagine most of us are proactive rather than reactive type people. So hopefully that's all right. But beginning with the end in mind. So always think about where we're trying to get to and then bring it back from there. Putting first things first. So again, thinking back to our 90-day planning, what are the really important things that must be done rather than getting bogged down in all the little things that we need to do? Looking for those collaborative solutions, thinking win-win. There's the seek first to understand, number 5 there, and then to be understood. So rather than jumping in telling people what we want first, let's sit back and really understand the other person's point of view. Horrible American word, synergize, but we all know what it means, even if it's spelt with a Z. And also sharpening the saw is about continual professional development and improving ourselves. Louise enjoyed that one about synergize, I think. Right. So understanding ourselves, one of the things that we do a lot with our clients, we do it with all of the clients that we work with on an in-depth basis, is we do a work of leaders DISC profile, which takes things a little bit further than a standard DISC profile, and it looks at our ability as a leader to be able to see the big picture, the vision side of things, to align other people to an execution. And it gives us a benchmark, identifies our strengths and our challenges, and is a really good way to go. And that might be something else that you'd like to consider, is doing something like that. Get a benchmark of you as a leader, as well as your DISC profile, and that's a good place to understand yourself a little bit more, so that you can develop. I've already talked about this side of things, so I think I don't need to labor on that again. But another thing that I would really encourage you to have a look at is there's a little animated video online. If you search for, you can see it up the top there. If you search for David Marquette, M-A-R, you can see the spelling up there, Q-U-E-T. It's around greatness. There's this little animated cartoon. It's about 9 minutes long, and it talks about moving from. He's a submarine captain. Basically a new class of nuclear submarines in the US. He's an ex-Navy SEAL, and he vows never to give an order again. He realizes that he can't think for 219 crew members that he's got on board his submarine and be the one that tells people what to do every time. They've got a big audit inspection coming on, and he knows that he needs to change that way. So he vows never to give an order again. The only order he retains is the launch of the nuclear missile. But everything else, he moves from giving from giving an order to giving intent. And have a look at it, find it. When you've got 9 or 10 minutes, you might even want to share it with some of your team, because there's some really good takeouts around here, and it changes the model that we think of from a military leader of just giving orders to giving that intent. And there are 3 steps that he followed that helped him to do that. And the first was to stop giving orders straight away. He did that overnight. And it's a little bit akin to saying to people when they come to you with, what should I do? Instead of saying, well, this is what I think, you essentially ask, okay, what do you think we should do? What would you do? What would you do in my shoes? If it was your business, what would you do? That kind of thing. And that's a bit of a habit for us to break quite often, because we like to give the answer, like to demonstrate that we know what we're doing. So take a pause maybe, and then you can do that overnight, and it starts to get other people to be thinking a little bit more as you would want them to think. Then a bit more over time, he found that if he started to ask, okay, well, so if the intent then is to position the submarine at this particular location, and then you're fine, and you're saying we're going to dive now, what do you think I'm thinking? And then the person comes back and goes, well, I think you want to know if it's safe to dive. Yes. So what makes it safe to dive? Hatches are closed, blah, blah, blah. And that's about making sure that within our business, we're getting them to start to think a little bit more in our shoes. So once we've got a solution, that takes a bit more time because they've got to think those things through. But that's about competence and about understanding what is the safe thing to do or the correct way of doing things. And then finally, it's asking, is it the right thing to do? So that's getting people to think a bit more strategically. Is this what we really, really should be doing? So steps 2 and 3 take a little bit of time. And I think you said they take about 18 months to embed within the submarine. But step 1 is immediate and saw immediate change and had tremendous effects on the business. So that's something that if you're going to have a takeaway and have a look for something, do search for that video and see what you think about it. Within our model, there's a number of aspects of leadership that do span the whole model, but I've just picked out a few things from our in-flight checks, which, by the way, if you'd like to have a look at doing the in-flight checks within your business with us, it's a great way of benchmarking where the business is on scalability. But some of the leadership ones to know whether leadership and vision are strong within the business is whether, first of all, whether the leadership team in particular understand each other's personality and leadership styles, but all team members identify a leadership/person improvement habit every 90 days, that we've got our core ideology, which is values and purpose, are well defined and made role relevant by employees so they understand what they mean to them. We haven't just got a list of values that are stuck up on the wall somewhere, but we've actually personalized them to our own roles, and that we've embedded that core ideology in everything that we do, all of our processes and things, including recruitment, reviews, feedback, all those good things, and that we're identifying a core ideology improvement priority and implemented every 90 days. So they're just a few, but as I say, leadership spans throughout the model, if you like, for building a great business. So that's all I wanted to say on leadership, just as that little bit of an overview around some of the key things, and just hopefully giving you some thoughts and reminders, maybe 1 or 2 things that you might be able to think about. But what I'm really excited about now is, I mentioned the military. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Lizzie Bernthal, who's a great friend of mine. She's a select member. Got a lot of respect for Lizzie. She is ex-military, the best service, of course, the RAF side of things. But Lizzie is going to give us a little bit of an insight into her views on leadership.
So, yes, 25 years in the Army. I have a little bit about leadership. I have received a lot of orders in my life, and I won't be giving any today. Now, the first thing I like to do is for you to clap yourself, because the very fact you're here, you are a leader. So what I'm talking about here is, and it's interesting that Kevin was talking about knowing yourself and leading yourself. In order to be a leader, you have to trust yourself, because you have to trust yourself before you can trust others. And that is all to do with confidence. Confidence is all about trust, trusting ourselves, trusting our teams, trusting something will happen. And as part of that, we have to be resilient. Particularly right now, all that we've been through in the last, 2 years, whatever goes longer and longer, we have to be resilient. And a part of that is our capacity to adapt. And within that, we have to cope with risk and adversity. Like, we've had so much to deal with over the last 2 years. And part of that is resistance, accepting that, oh my goodness, what's going on right now? The recovery process, when we think, well, okay, let's just deal with it. And then the reconfiguration, which is when we realize what's been going on, how we become the new person that we were before. So when I'm talking about that, we always hear about bouncing back, but actually we bounce forward. And we've had to do a lot of bouncing forward over the last 2 years, because we are not the same person we were 2 years ago. Our teams have changed. Our businesses have changed. Things have come and gone. We've had to be adaptable. And so the fact you're here is a huge, huge congratulations to you. So what I'm going to talk about is my C's of confidence. And part of that is who we are being and what we are doing. And I'm all passionate about who we're being. But in order to be the best version of us, we've got to do the best version of us as well. So to start with, I talk about my C's. What is your compass? We all have to have a compass. And part of that is our vision and our purpose, and who are the people that are going to be with us on our way. We learn so much about the how, but actually the how is not what we need. It's the who. Who are the people that are there to be our advocates? Who are the people like Bismarck, Kevin, Caroline, everyone within this team that are here to be our who's, to help us on our way? And part of that, it's having a course. What is our course of action? What is our path? Which path are we going on? Are we on the right path? And if we're not, then we have to have the courage to change path, to make sure that we're on that right path. And a part of that is being creative, another C. And then when we're creative, we get the clarification. And the clarification of where we're going and how we're getting there. But as part of that, as Kevin always alluded to, it's really important we collaborate, we connect. We have to have people with us. So who are those cheerleaders for us that are going to be those that are actually fighting our corner, that we can collaborate with, that we can be better than we are ourselves because we're all part of a group? And a part of that, who are we communicating with to build up those collaborations? And as part of that, it's calculating the risks. What risks are we having to face? What are we going to overcome to do so? Because change is with us all the time, as we've found even more than ever over the last 2 years. So anticipate the change and calculate the risks, and then create that climate of absolute awesomeness and the impact that we want to make. So that's all about the doing. And the being, this is the most important thing, which I'm always really passionate about, being the best we can be, owning our awesome within us. And to reassure you, everyone has confidence and resilience with them already. No baby is born without confidence. Every baby that's born lies in their cot, looks up, they have chubby legs, they have hair sticking up. They never say, don't look at me, I'm having a bad hair day. They cry, they scream, they laugh, they move through emotions without getting any attention to it. And that's how it is. So we all have it within us. So when anybody comes to say they're lacking confidence, I always say, you have it all. You just need to have a conversation to find it again. So part of that is making choices. And this is the thing that's most important. We all have a choice. Now, even when we feel we haven't got a choice, we're making a choice not to have a choice. And so as a leader, we make very powerful choices. Now, sometimes, and I'd like you to reflect after this, what choices have you made over the last 2 years that you didn't even think was a choice? You could have stayed at home, done the gardening, packed up your business. It's too difficult, but you didn't. You survived, became stronger for it, and you made that choice. Even at the time, you didn't feel you made a choice. Now, when I went to Afghanistan, not knowing if I'm ever going to see my daughter again, I didn't see that was a choice because I knew I had a team to lead. And it wasn't till afterwards that I realised, actually, I could have had a choice. I could have not gone. But that would have been, what sort of leader would that have been if I'd put somebody else in their place, potentially get killed in my place? So sometimes we make choices that we don't even think are choices. So celebrate those choices that you made that now you realise was a choice. And as part of that is courage. Now, courage doesn't have to be doing great, massive things like, getting on a plane somewhere you don't want to go to. Courage is those every little things we do every minute of every day that we don't even see are courage. They ring up a client that you don't know how they're going to respond. Ring up a prospect to say, oh, I'm not sure how this conversation is going to go. Ring up a friend when you don't know how they are to see you don't know the outcome. Because my definition of courage is when there's no guarantee of the outcome. So how many times in a day do we do things we don't know what the outcome might be? That is little acts of courage where cumulatively make a massive difference. And as part of that, what can you control? We can only control our ourselves. We can't control how other people are going to react. We can't control the weather. There's so much we can't control. And if you watch a surfer, I love watching, if you watch surfing, surfers do not try and control the waves. They go with the wave. So how can you be more of a surfer than a controller? Because when we go with the flow, the magic happens. And how much time do we waste trying to control things that we can't control? So really focus on the things you can control. You can control how many people you call if you want to build your business. You can control connecting with the right people to build your business. So focus on the things you can control and don't waste energy on the things that you try to control, but you know that you can't. And as part of that, what are your core values? And I, as you know, those of you who know me now, I'm passionate about what your core values are. Integrity for me is absolutely fundamental. And what I mean by integrity, I mean, if you think of a bike wheel that's round, when it goes smoothly, it just goes round. If it's got a dent in it, it gets cloggy and it just doesn't flow properly. That to me is integrity. So it's been whole and complete, being the best version of you and doing what is right, whereas morality is wanting to be right. So how many times in your communication are you trying to show that you want to be right or you make the other person wrong? So communication is absolutely vital that we're in integrity and we want the best outcome. And the other thing I would say about communication, there is no such thing as a difficult conversation. It's the stories we make up in our heads that make it difficult. So before you go into any communication, think of the outcome you want to have. And as part of that, you will be in integrity, you will perform much more powerfully, and as a result, the conversation goes far better. And as part of that, it's staying calm and composed. And I know that's can be really difficult at times, but that's all part of courage, being in control and being that leader. And be really conscious of the behavior that you're portraying, because your team look up to you to be that person of calmness. So when notice how you control yourself. Now, this is where obviously the mindset stuff kicks in, and doing whatever routine that you need to do to help you stay in that calm, confident way and stay centered, because that is when we actually can be the best version of us. And be compassionate. We all need to support our teams. We all need to support our clients. Sometimes things don't go well. And actually having those conversations without criticism. And this is where curiosity comes in and not criticism, comparison, or judgment, because that is when things go wrong. And particularly judging ourselves. We are our own worst bullies. I'm on a mission to get rid of toxicity in the workplace, but I know part of that is sorting out our heads, because no one can bully us like we bully ourselves. So acknowledge, how compassionate you are with yourself. So that's a sort of a whole selection of a massive number of C's. But the biggest thing I would say, the biggest lesson for me is notice the choices you make, be courageous, notice what you can control, and celebrate success with yourself and your teams, because that keeps morale up. And when people feel good about themselves, they perform better. So the more you can celebrate, and the little wins are often the most powerful, as well as obviously the big wins. So celebrate with your team. And, that's my short tips for C's.
That's fantastic. How many C's were there in there? Because
I lost count. I've got about 20. In fact, I did a presentation last week on my C's, and it was really interesting. Oh, craziness! I forgot the trade craziness, because you've got to have some fun in your business too.
So I think we got time for maybe just a couple of questions.
Hi, Lizzie. Really enjoyed that. I've worked for some excellent leaders in my time, and I've also worked with some pretty awful ones. And I would sort of take from that the ability to just celebrate the small stuff every day, the little wins, because you only achieve big things with lots of small steps. And I think it's really important to recognize, perhaps at the end of that day, the end of that week, the end of that month, what's gone well and how that's grown your business. And I think one of the hardest things running your own business is the frustration of a progress which is slower. And I think was it Martin Luther King that said, if you can't run, if you can't fly, you run. If you can't run, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl. But just keep moving forward. Which sounds a little bit grim, but when you add a little bit of celebration and recognition of what you've actually achieved, even if it feels quite small in that moment, then it's quite powerful in the long term. And if you can give that to other people, that has a massive effect of empowering them to grow in their confidence. And quite resonated really strongly with me. So thanks for that. Brilliant.
Thank you. And I think part of that, I think we are hardwired for negativity because our brain's there to protect us. So I don't know how they're the research, but 70,000 thoughts a day or something crazy, of which 70% are negative. So we are hardwired to see if anybody says anything to us, we always assume it's going to be bad. So not always, hopefully not, but, we are hardwired for the negativity. So we have to make even more effort to celebrate, because if we do one thing wrong, we only focus on our last mistake, not the 10 other million things that we've done that's right. So this is why celebration is so important. Brilliant. Thank you.
Anybody else got the courage or confidence to ask Lizzie a question?
Or the choice.
Or the choice. Yes. The choice. So I'm going to say thank you very much again to Lizzie for some excellent insights there. And I think I'm going to want to listen back to that recording, because you packed that with so many things that I think I'm going to want to listen to that.
It's going to grab as much as I could put in 10 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.